everyone, my name is Rosie, and today on My Spring Harvest we are joined by the brilliant Tarn Bright, CEO of Home for Good. Tarn, thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure, Rosie. Thank you for having me.
This year, Home for Good are key partners with Spring Harvest, so we're going to be around you a lot for the whole of 2024, which we're so excited for. And I wonder, could you just tell us a little bit about you, but also Home for Good and what you're all about at Home for Good?
Well, firstly, Rosie, thank you for sharing your time with me today. It's just a privilege to be able to share. Now, just a little bit about me and more about Home for Good. So I'm an adoptive mum of two boys who are full brothers, and they are now 11 and 12, just turned 11 and 12. Can't quite believe it. I fostered them in the first instance when they were but just wee babies, and did fostering with concurrent adoption. And as I say, now more than a decade on, Rosie, we live as a little trio in southeast London, and they do have some additional challenges, which, as we will talk about a bit later on as well, that is a very typical expectation for children in the care system because of all sorts of different elements of trauma that they will have gone through. But that's one of the joys of being an adoptive mum, is that you learn to grow and learn and be alongside these incredible children, and they are a gift to me. So that's a little bit about me, Rosie. And then Home for Good. Well, Home for Good is a national charity, England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and we have the privilege of being able to work through the church to find individuals, couples and families who we then journey with, and we talk to them about the incredible role that foster carers, adopters and supported lodgings hosts can make in this country, in the lives of children in the care system. And we journey with them, and we equip them and pray with them, and then we refer them on to local authorities or to a variety of different agencies. But also part of our job, as well as referring, is to just keep calling the church, Rosie, to be what the church can be. And that is ultimately, as we passionately believe, a solution to this, a solution to how we care, a solution to how we hold the most vulnerable. And it never ceases to surprise me, Rosie, just how when the church comes together and we collectively ask the question, how can we play our part? And when we collectively ask loudly, who cares? And we say, do you know what we do? I care. And that individually our responses brings everything together in a way that then the church at the heart, individuals within that, can care for children in the care system. That's what Home for Good is about. It's about encouraging, nurturing, inspiring and equipping the church to step in, step forth and continue to do what she's called to do. And so that's Home for Good.
I'm a mum through adoption as well, so I've got two little ones. I've got a little boy who we adopted when he was 4, and a little girl that we adopted when she was 2. So you've been a foster carer and an adopter in your time, and there's another term that we want to talk
Yes.
about, which is supported lodgings, and
Yeah.
this is something that I wonder if our community might be less aware of. I know that myself, I was less aware of
Right,
this.
right.
So can you tell us a little bit about supported lodgings and why you at Home for Good are so passionate about supported
Yeah,
lodgings?
I'd love to. Now, people say, my goodness, Tan, you're so passionate about adoption. Like, it's surprised that everybody in your world isn't adopting, which of course it isn't right for everybody. And I'm the first person to say that, Rosie. But I equally am as a passionate advocate for fostering, because some children need care for some part of their life, right? And the most glorious thing in the world is reunification, when parents, by birth parents, are able to um, build enough around their own resilience to be able to have children reunified, if that's at all possible. Likewise, there is something called supported lodgings, and I've also been a supported lodgings host. Now, let me just explain what that is then. So I have, in one sense, I've got like the full card, the full sort of like, suite of cards in this regard. In this country, and to be fair, many Western contexts, we have a growing challenge around how we care for teenagers. We, as society at large, and the care system that is not a product of conscious design, our care system is a product of bolt-on after bolt-on after bolt-on since the 1940s. Therefore, in today's 2024, where we've got a ever-growing number of teenagers coming into care for the first time, age 16 plus, we don't have the mechanisms to be able to deal with that in an effective way. And so we find ourselves now with 1 in 4 entering the care system, 16 and above. What do we do about that? So 20 years ago, the government came up with this scheme called supported lodgings. Now, the word lodgings is something, I don't know about you, but it still dredges up in my mind this real like 1940s, 50s kind of, travelling salesman needs lodging for the week kind of thing, and he turns up at, Mrs. Smith's B&B and, it's that awful lodgings phrase. Well, take the phrase out and put instead family-based foster light care for teenagers. That's what supported lodgings is. It's in effect where you have a spare room, you have love in your heart and your home. You have the capacity to be able to advocate for a young person, to be able to ensure that they're accessing employment, education, training, and that you give them a tribe to belong to. And I did that before I fostered and before I adopted. So myself and some of my dear friends who are still the best friends in my life, we rented a big old home in the back end of Peckham, and we together, the overflow of our friendship, we approached our local context and said that we wanted to be supported lodgings hosts. And for years, that home ran, whereby the teenagers presenting as homeless and teenagers on the edge of care and teenagers who were finding themselves in all sorts of different situations, Rosie, we offered supported lodgings and were hosts. And it was the most incredible time. Chaos at times, but I have to say, it was such a season of growth and learning what it was to live with teenagers from today and the challenges that they were facing, and gun, gang, knife culture and self-harming and all the things that are so scary when you're presented with them. Yet equally, when you journey that through living with teenagers and work out, actually, as with all of us, the challenges that teenagers face, oftentimes it simply takes a loving and committed tribe around them to create safety, sanctuary, understanding. My goodness, that can get through so much of the difficulties that our teenagers face today. Not all the time, not all the time, but we just found that our relationships with the young people that were coming through our home today are still held precious.
It's so great to hear about you having the whole pack as well of doing all of the 3 types of care for those with care experience. That's amazing. And because you've had such a history of caring for children with care experience, have you kind of noticed a bit of a shift in how the church approaches church and fostering and now supported lodgings through kind of your history of being that being such a massive part of your life? Have you noticed any shifts in the church in that
Yeah,
time?
that's such a good question. The answer would be in part and in places. And all the way from a decade ago, where there were just incredible, what felt like prophetic hotspots. So I can name places like Southampton and Nottingham and other places where there was just a rich sense of either church unity and or forward thinking about how churches wanted to come together to work with their local authority. They were just streets ahead, Rosie, and already were talking into the narrative, the biblical narrative around, in effect, that true worship is this. It's when we care for the widows and the orphans. And so in parts and in places, I can see where the church has been a front runner in absolutely embracing what this is to live out the gospel. And then there's other places and spaces whereby we speak for the first time to a church, and you can almost see this light bulb moment of, oh my gosh, we've got mission before. How can we not have seen that the children in the care system, Rosie, and this is always gets me this bit, I came up with this terminology just as I was speaking to churches about asking them to embrace the fact that these children, these are our children, not somebody else's problem, not a local authority's issue. These children are our children, our society's children. These children are the future generations. Whether you're in church life or whether you're not, these are our children. And what we do to step in to help engage with, love and nurture children in the care system waiting for a home, that is such an indication of our gospel response and our love for Jesus. And you could literally see, and I still do it every now and again, churches who are so open, but they're just not seeing it, Rosie, in the sense of, oh my goodness, how have we not seen this as so fundamental to what it is to live out the message of Christ in our lives? So I've definitely seen some shifts very early on. Now I'm still seeing churches with scales. It feels like coming off of eyes, and that's beautiful to behold, those moments when you're with church leaders like that.
That's such a joy to hear. And when you talk about the scales falling from people's eyes about the need and the heart for adoption, I feel like that happened to me as my husband and I were going through the process and we were reading scripture. You would just see so much about adoption in the Bible, right? And there's so many stories and narratives in the Bible that show God's heart for adoption. This isn't just something that we're passionate about, but something that's woven through the whole narrative of the Bible. It's so reflective of God's heart and who he is. So is that the same for you? What can you tell us about the narrative that you see in the Bible through adoption and fostering and caring for those people who have care experience? What's that narrative that you can see?
Yeah, I mean, in one sense, the obvious ones are the kind of Abba Father and as he adopted us. Those things in one sense was my sort of foundational baseline, if we can call it that. So like Room 101, and I could get it and it was tangible. And if anything, Rosie, what I've really loved is deepening my own theology around what it is to care for the vulnerable. For me, where I've gone really deep is around God placing the lonely in families. Now, let me explain that. In Psalm 68, it talks about the fact that God is the father to the fatherless, right? Defender of widows. This is our God whose dwelling is holy. And God, this very God, places the lonely in families. And he sets the prisoners free from a sun-scorched land. And on that psalm goes, right? Now, the reason that's gone so deep for me, and I've evolved in one sense my personal thinking just from, well, God's adopted us into his family and therefore we will adopt others into ours, is because the reality is, Rosie, that we don't want at Home for Good the language to be about a rescue narrative whereby the children are placed into my world and therefore all is well, right? Because actually, what's richer and deeper than that is that I too was the lonely one. I too, Tarn, was the one who had so much love to give and yet too was lonely. And my children found themselves through no fault of their own, and I will say this very publicly as well, Rosie, and through no fault of their biological family's fault, because their biological family went through repeated intergenerational trauma. So my prayer life over my children's biological parents is so constant, because I want them to experience wellness and healing and wholeness. But so Mac and Charlie found themselves through no fault of their own and no fault of their birth parents' experience. They too had just been placed in trauma. My children needed to be placed in family. And so there I found myself reading the Psalms and going, oh, God is the father to the fatherless and the defender of widows. And he's so holy that he wants his dwelling to be a place whereby people are put into family. God is a family-making God. God said, let me have Father, Son and Holy Spirit. I don't need to be a monotheistic God. I want people to do this with. I want entities in which to inhabit life together. God is a family-making God. And so he says, I want to place the lonely in families, of which I count myself one. And so you could therefore say, well, actually, Mac and Charlie adopted me as much as I adopted Mac and Charlie, right? Because they were my family and I became their family. And together, as lonely people, we were placed together as family. It's restoration, and it's restoration through the power of the Holy Spirit.
Obviously not everyone will be called to foster, to adopt, or to offer supported lodgings. That's not everyone's calling. They might not even be set up for it. So if there are people that are excited about what you've been talking about today, or are passionate about this vision about supporting children and young people with care experience to find homes, what could they do?
Everybody's got a part to play. Now, let me tell you about Uncle Pete. Uncle Pete is a 6'5", owner of ultimately a construction company. The thing that Pete is passionate about is how he can serve my children, right? He's like such the size of man that he is as well. He can pick both boys up, one hand each kind of thing. They love him. They adore him. They think he's the best thing since sliced bread. Now, I haven't got what Pete has got, right. I haven't got that incredible sense of going, literally into the woods and doing camps and dens and making fire and, all those sorts of things. Those type of people are utterly, utterly wonderful. Pete, Uncle Pete, makes up such a significant part of our family experience because he's there supporting me in parenting, right? There's a load of people that do that in our lives. Now, take me out of this. Multiple hundreds and thousands of foster carers and adopters across this land are being supported by people through school runs, homework clubs, meals being dropped round, dog walking, when teenagers particularly are just not wanting to talk to the parents, right? Oh my goodness, Rosie, having the extended tribe who go, come for a dog walk with me, come on, let's just get this out. We don't want to have another meltdown today, right? Come and just hang out with me and let's get a little bit of this energy out the system, right? It is these very people, Rosie, who are creating resilient placements by them playing their part, and we cannot and must not underestimate them. They are in some and many instances holding placements together. So I put out an invite to all the Uncle Pete's and the Auntie Beryl's and the whatever shape, size you may be, whatever skills you may have, whatever time you have, if it's an hour a week, an hour a month. Find the local community within your community who's fostering and adopting and doing supported lodgings. Who can you get around, love and support? Who can you put your arms around and go, what is it we can do to support you in what you're doing so that we can support these children and support you? And Rosie, if we can develop through that a broader narrative of the church is caring for, remember, these our children, my goodness, we will only but go from strength to strength.
Go on, Uncle Pete. Go on, Uncle Pete. Building dens in the forest. We need more Uncle Pete's around, don't we? He sounds amazing.
I could replicate.
And for those of us who are maybe listening that do feel stirred to do something about this in terms of making a next step or praying through options for if they could offer a home to a child through fostering, adoption or supported lodgings, what would be their next step?
Well, at Home for Good, we've purposefully designed, Rosie, for there to be what we call an inquiry and family care team. And we have independent, highly qualified social workers who are in that team. And so people can reach out to Home for Good, homeforgood.org.uk, and you'll be assigned a caseworker. And that caseworker, it might just be a one-time call that you have. And through that conversation, you identify what a clear pathway route for you might be, or it might just be that you identify not now isn't the right time, but listen, where can I support and where can I help and where can I, and we've got all sorts of resources to help people understand that as well. But by in the first instance, being assigned a caseworker by Home for Good, you can then personally journey where you're at, what your goals are, what your dreams are, what you're passionate about, and practically talk through what shape of family do you have? Where are you at in terms of singleness, marriage, post-marriage, whatever it might be? Because that will really then help our team, help you work through what could you do? Because for some people, let's just say a single person who, for whatever reason, isn't wanting to have a biological family, that's totally appropriate for some people, but they might feel as though they want to foster, or they might want to be a solo adopter. We can help work out with that individual what experience they might need to be able to gain in order that if they went to assessment, they would be able to offer what they need to be approved through the process. Because what a social worker will tell you at a local authority level, if you rang and said, I really would love to adopt, they say, what experience do you have with children? Now, what we can do is to say, right, here's a list. These are the ways that by the time you get to a local authority or what's called a regional adoption agency, if you can say, all right, great, I've got to come alongside a foster family and adoptive family. I understand about the unique and challenging traumas of which we talked about, Rosie, right at the beginning. I've got practical experience now because I babysit once a month. And I'm on the rota now with children's work in my local church. And there's a club round the road where I do, I do pizza and film and pizza night with some teenagers. Oh my gosh, just through that alone, Rosie, there's already ways that we can help take people in so much on their journey so that when the time is right and they're ready to move forward, we can not only put them in touch with the right assessing agencies, but they will be in such a stronger position to be able to evidence all that they've got to give. And that's such a wonderful thing for us as an organisation, being able to get people assessment ready. So reach out to us and we would love to take you on that journey.
Thanks, Tart. So you're going to be joining us at Spring Harvest this Easter. You're going to come to both Minehead and Skegness. And I want to know, this is a bit of a tricky question to end on, Tarn, so I'm sorry about that. I want to know what 5 things, your absolute 5 essentials are that you're bringing to Spring Harvest with you. You would not leave your house without them. What are those 5 essentials?
Okay, coming to Spring Harvest, my essentials are my children, right? Just because they're so much fun. My journal, right? Because there's so much incredible teaching at Spring Harvest. When I don't have my journal in my handbag, right, I'm writing on scraps of paper or whatever about, all the various incredible speakers that will be there. Dry shampoo, find that a very important element because I haven't got the time to wash my hair, right? So dry shampoo, that's third. Fourth, I would probably say my broccoli because I'm a vegan and there's not a lot of fresh broccoli anywhere on site at Butlins. And I have been known to bring a rucksack worth of lettuce and broccoli. And then fifth, I would say, go on, sneaky bar of chocolate, just to keep me going because there's so much good stuff that we're going to be up to on site. So broccoli and chocolate, what a combination. So they're my 5 essentials.